Good afternoon. Notice of a public meeting of the City Commission of the City of Brownsville pursuant to Chapter 551, Title 5 of the Texas Government Code, the Texas Open Meetings Act. Notice is hereby given that the City Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, in accordance with Article 5, Section 12 of the Charter of said city, will convene a regular meeting on June 2023 at 5 p.m. in the City Commission chambers located on the second floor of the Brownsville City Hall, Old Federal Building, located at 1001 East Elizabeth Street. Members of the public who submitted a public comment form will be permitted to offer public comments as provided by the agenda and as permitted by the presiding officer during the meeting. A recording of the meeting will be made and will be available to the public in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. Mayor, it is 5:01. Just to confirm that we do have a quorum in person, Commissioner Gowen has joined the meeting virtually.
Thank you.
The next item is invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Before you start, could you all hear that after? Did it get better?
His name is Pastor Raphael, and I'll have him introduce himself, but please stand for the prayer and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance afterwards.
Thank you, Pastor Burks. Dear Honor, Mr. John Cowan, dear Commissioners, thank you for this great opportunity. Please bow our hands and let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before the throne of grace in the name that is above all names of Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Lord, on this occasion, we place before you our city officials in this meeting that they will be guiding and leading today, Father. Father, we ask you for wisdom, power, and knowledge from heaven, Lord, to our mayor and also our commissioners, Father. We ask you, God, to give them wisdom to direct our city with your wisdom, grace, and intelligence, Lord. We ask you, Father, also to give each and every one of our leaders, Lord, a remembrance that you have established this nation, Lord. And this nation was established under and according to the Bible principles, Father. We ask you, Lord, to give them your guidance, Lord. Since our nation has been established according to your principles, Father, give them wisdom, Lord, to always hear your voice, Lord, in their hearts in how to lead our great city of Brownsville, Texas, Father. Father, this great city has been established, and this valley, Father, also has the land of the Holy Spirit since the beginning, Father. And we ask you, Lord, to keep on guiding our city officials to guide our city, Father, according to your principles. We bless them, we bless our mayor, we bless our commissioners, Father, and we bless all of the families that are part of this great city of Brownsville, Texas. In the name that is above all name of Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen and amen.
And now we'll have a short moment of silence where we can all add our prayers to what has already been spoken. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Under the Texas flag, I pledge allegiance to thee, one faith under God, one and indivisible.
The next item, we have proclamations. First proclamation is Elder Abuse Awareness Month.
Thank you, Yoli. Buenas tardes. Is there anybody here to receive the proclamation for Elder Abuse Awareness Month? Please come forward. And as they come forth, I will read the proclamation. A proclamation of the City Commission of Brownsville, Texas, designating the month of June 2023 as Elder Abuse Awareness Month. Whereas older adults and people with disabilities of diverse backgrounds contribute to the well-being of this city by working, caregiving, volunteering, and actively preserving customs, rituals, and traditions. And whereas as we age, we build momentum by accumulating knowledge, experience, insight, and wisdom that can be shared to enrich our community. And whereas abuse of older adults and people with disabilities is a community concern affecting thousands of people across Texas. And whereas abuse affected more than 119,448 older adults and people with disabilities in Texas in 2022. And whereas elder abuse is everyone's business, it's important to strengthen our efforts to prevent, report, and address elder abuse. Now, therefore, we, the members of the City Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, by virtue of the authority vested by the Charter of said city, and on behalf of all of our citizens, do hereby designate the month of June 2023 as Elder Abuse Awareness Month, and further call upon the residents of Brownsville to work together to help reduce abuse and neglect of older adults and people with disabilities. Done on this day, the 20th day of June 2023. And if anyone would like to say a few words, please feel free to approach the podium.
I'd just like to say thank you, Mayor, Commissioners, for recognizing the importance of elder abuse awareness, which is how we are able to minimize abuse and neglect of the elderly and disabled in our community. And I would like to remind everybody that elder abuse is everyone's business. If you suspect abuse, neglect, or financial exploitation of an elderly or disabled person, please refer to us. Reporter information is never revealed. All information is strictly confidential. Let's work together to improve the lives of the elderly and disabled in our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next proclamation, we have recognizing Las Ramblas at Market Square.
If the Las Ramblas team would like to come on up to receive this. A proclamation of the City Commission of Brownsville, Texas, celebrating Las Ramblas at Market Square, top 5 finalists for the James Beard Foundation Award. Whereas Las Ramblas at Market Square opened its doors in 2019 by Michael and Fabian Limas to be a visionary craft cocktail lounge in historic downtown Brownsville, which has contributed sales taxes and wages to the local economy, style and flavor to the downtown character, and which continues to evolve as a staple in Brownsville. And whereas in 2023, Las Ramblas at Market Square was announced as a semifinalist and then finalist in the Outstanding Bar category of the coveted James Beard Award as one of only 5 bars from across the United States to make the Outstanding Bar finals. And whereas the James Beard Award exists to recognize members of the food, beverage, and hospitality industry who represent the James Beard Foundation's mission of championing a standard of good food anchored in talent, equity, and sustainability. And whereas in May of 2023, Las Ramblas at Market Square represented Brownsville and Chicago, Illinois, attending the 2023 James Beard Awards alongside the nation's top members of the hospitality industry as the first establishment in the Rio Grande Valley nominated for a James Beard Award. And whereas the City of Brownsville is proud to have establishments who are the embodiment of entrepreneurship and which champion quality, service, atmosphere, and their people as equally as, if not more than, profits. And whereas Las Ramblas at Market Square founders Michael and Fabian Limas and partner Christopher Galicia have created and successfully operate such an establishment in our city, now therefore we, the members of the Commission of the City of Brownsville, Texas, by virtue of the authority vested by the Charter of said city, and on behalf of all our citizens, do hereby celebrate Las Ramblas at Market Square, its founders, partners, and entire team for their success, and further call upon the residents of Brownsville to do the same and to strive for such achievement in themselves to continue to make Brownsville the amazing community it is. Done this 20th day of June 2023, signed Mayor and City Commission. Thank you, guys. Congratulations.
On behalf of the Ramblas team, I want to say thank you very much to Mayor Cowan and the rest of the commission for this tremendous honor. It is a distinct honor for us to represent our beautiful city of Brownsville, Texas on a national scale. We do not intend to stop here, so we plan to continue on putting Brownsville in the positive light and showcasing our amazing city that we would love and hope for everyone to come visit in the years and years to come. So thank you, Mayor Cowan, and the rest of the commission. It's truly a deep honor. And thank you to the community for continuing to support us year after year. Thank you.
Next, we have public comment period. We do have 7. First one is Ms. Yolanda Spies.
Welcome, ma'am. Please state your name and you have 3 minutes.
Yolanda Spies, filing a false police report, violating police protocol by an officer declaring himself an intermediary when it's not in his job description, lying by an officer saying that it was out of his hands when he voluntarily put his hands in the mess by making himself the intermediary. 3 lies about the whereabouts of the real criminal and her contact information when he had her address, which was omitted from the police report. Evasive behavior by an officer and then trying to cover his mistakes after there's mention of an attorney being contacted after ignoring a series of texts, and I have those texts as evidence. Showing bias, lying, and omitting information on the police report, even though it proved the police officer's wrongdoing and that the officer did not know the law or simply ignored it. Verbally abusing a citizen when coming in to make a formal complaint against an officer, sent away and told that there was no case and the citizen had no rights, and of course, no formal complaint was taken. Discouragement by a Brownsville police detective when asked to submit the paperwork for a property hearing. There's more. These are just 8 things that were done wrong on one incident to one Brownsville citizen speaking up against the Brownsville Police Department. There are more stories and cases, not just this one. I could spend an evening telling you all of this, and it is appropriate to talk to you about it because all of you are serving Brownsville residents. And this is how the police department, the Brownsville Police Department, is abusing Brownsville residents. They treat them like criminals and garbage, and then they violate their rights. Brownsville residents don't deserve that. My case is just a dog. What happens when it's a false imprisonment, an injury or a death, lost drugs or drug money, and all because the Brownsville Police Department did not follow up appropriately and simply do not know or don't care about the law. At this time, it doesn't affect you, but remember, there is a first time for everything, especially here in Brownsville. Citizens should feel safe in their city, and as commissioners and you, Mr. Mayor, you can fix it. I am asking that you all get to work to do right by the people you serve because now you're getting paid. So there's no excuse why you can't get this resolved. Thank you.
Next, we have Taylor Kramer.
Good evening, everybody.
Please state your name and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Taylor Kramer. I'm the director of CASSI, Citizens Against Sexualization of Children. Let me tell you a little bit about CASSI. CASC or CASSI is not anti-LGBTQ. There's no money collected and no politics discussed. CASSI assembles at municipal, county, and ISD meetings for public comment. CASSI will address sexually inappropriate content and situations children are being exposed to and advocate for common sense zero tolerance of overtly sexual content for children. CASSI is all about action. All you need to do is show up and attend meetings and sign up for public comment to tell your local community we are paying attention and will not tolerate any overtly sexual content aimed towards children. Everyone who is against the sexualization of children is welcome to join CASSI. Now, I wanted to preface my public comment tonight. I will be talking about STEP and the Brownsville's LGBTQ+ task force. Members of the task force are also members of STEP. They share the same view on the Amor is Amor event. And after that blatantly sexual event with many children present and participating, Brownsville's LGBTQ+ task force did not condemn or distance themselves from STEP. They applauded it and defended it. Ethically, that puts Brownsville's LGBTQ+ task force in the same boat as STEP, one and the same. So I believe you were all handed a flyer about the Amor is Amor event on 2/19/23 at the Landmark on Tower Restaurant in Alamo. STEP hosted an LGBTQ+ youth fundraiser. And STEP is South Texas Equality Project. This was an all-ages drag show. There's a video on Facebook, on the CASC Facebook. The event was called Amor is Amor, or Love is Love. The flyer for the event had a drag queen in lingerie licking a leather glove right next to the words kids games. At this event, they had toddlers tipping drag queens. This is a sexual striptease with toddlers participating like they were at a strip club. This is not appropriate for children. This is an adult act. Why are young impressionable children being shown this as LGBTQ+ culture? Where are the LGBTQ+ doctors, lawyers, and scientists? This isn't about education or culture. This is sexual content aimed at children. This is what they're showing kids. This is the example of LGBTQ+ role models STEP shows children. Drag queens dancing for strangers that throw dollar bills at you. This is sexual content. They had children's games right next to the drag queen stage. Now that everybody is aware of South Texas Equality Project, what they do and what they think is appropriate for kids, and this goes for the LGBTQ+ task force as well. The members are all interchangeable. They all fall under that same umbrella as STEP. Ask yourselves, as leaders of city government, does STEP reflect, or the LGBTQ+ task force reflect or represent the values of the people of Brownsville? I don't think so. This is not how we treat our children here in the Valley. Thank you for your time.
Next, we have Saber Hargett.
Hello,
Please state your name and you have 3 minutes.
Saber Hargett. Thank you for the time to speak. In 2004, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 came out in theaters and I saw it. I was 11. For many days afterwards, I ran around trying to shoot webs out of my arms. Part of me truly believed there was a possibility I would become Spider-Man. Finally, I realized it wasn't likely to happen and I gave up on it as a literal possibility. Our culture invents fictions that extend beyond our biological and physical reality, and the imagination of a child grips those fictions tight, extending them forward in the child's life, where eventually they are exposed to the sunlight of reality. That's when children let go of the literal nature of the fiction while subsuming the lessons and feelings of the story into their psyche. These things layer up and weave the fabric of who we are. I am still in some way Spider-Man. This, however, is not the case with the fiction of radical gender ideology. With these stories, after children are exposed to super biological narratives, namely that sex and gender proper are fluid, mutable, transgressible, or meaningless, there is a growing cultural system being built to convince children that this is a literal reality as opposed to a metaphorical one. This system manipulates childish imagination to validate and solidify into reality fictions that should also be exposed to the light of day, fictions that must inevitably die to be subsumed by the layered personality. If you want a plant analogy, these children will continue to grow useless branches of thought that will destabilize their future development and understanding. And to aid that process is a humanistic sin. Most of us men have chinks in our masculine armor. I love David Bowie, I love gardening, design, and homemaking. Most women find, whether physically or in their personality, under-feminized traits. We learned how to attach and separate from standard sexual trunks around puberty and learn to love and appreciate these differences while understanding who and what we were and what roles we were meant to play. I could go on much longer, but to summarize, groups like STEP seek to over-sexualize children, destabilize their livable reality, and merely validate their own minority, and if social media is any indicator, often devious behavior. Attaching a municipal body and function to them or others like them is corrupt and tragic. I think it's a waste of money. It's a waste of time. It's deeply divisive and offensive to many people who are too busy or too scared to stand up against it. And I think statistics bear out that an outsized number of children are now identifying with these genderqueer groups far more than any average statistic of even homosexuality in the animal kingdom, and may easily make decisions they deeply regret in the future, i.e. hormones and bodily mutilation, all because of propagandizing of this ideology. Thank you.
Next, we have Celeste Esparza. Celeste Esparza. Next, we have Ezequiel Silva.
Good evening. Please state your name and you have 3 minutes.
My name is Ezequiel Zeke Silva. I'm here Mayor, Commissioners. I'm here to speak about what transpired a couple of weeks ago with the Rainbow Catwalk or Crosswalk, whatever you guys want to call it, between 10th and Washington and Adams. I think it was very inappropriate. I believe that you, as a city, crossed the line on this one. I don't think that it was appropriate for the city to do that kind of closure for the street for more than a week. It affected a lot of the small businesses. We didn't have no input in it. I understand that it's a month of June. It has nothing to do with the LGBTQT, has nothing to do with anything other than we cannot allow one organization to take over a city block just because they want to. On social media, they started attacking and trying to boycott my business because I made a comment that the rainbow was made up of God, and from there on, it took a life on its own. But yet, if I try to defend myself, I'm a homophobic. If I try to defend myself, it's something that I want to become, which I don't. I'm a married man for 33 years. As a matter of fact, June 12th was my mother's birthday. She's in heaven on her second year. June 13th is my wedding anniversary, which I had 33 years this year. And the 14th of June is my daughter's birthday. So June is a month of celebration for me. But it does not mean that I'm allowed to take some kind of abuse because I do not allow myself to be manipulated because I'm outspoken. Now, the city did not do a town hall to see everybody's expressions or feelings towards closing and designating a street in the downtown area where my business is, and not just my business, other businesses. It's not fair that we do not have parking spots. We do not have streets that are seen at night or during the day because there's no parking. But yet we dedicate a whole freaking week to close a street, to paint it in rainbow colors. We can't even paint stripes white. That to me is wrong. That is, I don't care if it was Elon Musk money. I don't see anywhere in writing that Musk said, use my money for this. As far as I understand, the Musk money was to beautify downtown, not an area to designate for a purpose. And that purpose was not to bring economy because it did not bring any business to us. Actually, it deterred people from coming downtown. So I expect you guys to take this as a learning curve. And if you all want to change the streets, let everybody know, let everybody vote. Put it up like you did many times for the public to vote on election day. Let the people decide what they want to do. The citizens are not happy, I'm not happy that the commission took this upon themselves or did not take this upon themselves, but somebody obviously did. And I
Time
think
is
they
up,
abused
sir.
their authority. So I hope you guys take this into consideration for the next time.
Next. Next, we have Maria Ruiz Diaz. Maria Ruiz.
I'm right here, ma'am.
Okay.
Shalom. Hallelujah! 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 For I am persuaded that neither life nor death, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor any creature shall be able to separate us from the love of God, which is in Christ Jesus. Romans 8:38 and 39. God's love for all of you is immeasurable. I'm here to express my area of concern. Steps is pushing and sexualizing our children, and the city needs to step away from this organization. The city of Brownsville should step away from promoting personal lifestyles and stop partnering with organizations that promote the sexualization of our children. City commissioners have supported agendas last year by the LGBTQ transgender group, raising the flag, the pride flag, which is the rainbow of God. The rainbow of God, when he made a covenant with Noah that he would no longer destroy the earth by water. So we continue with these activities for our children, pushing personal lifestyles on our children. And I quote, "But if anyone leads astray one of these little children who believe in me, he would be better off thrown into the depths of the sea with a millstone hung around his neck." Matthew 18:6. And I quote, "Surely the arm of the Lord, Seroa Adonai, is not too short, nor his ears too deaf to hear." Isaiah 59:1. And I quote, "Ah, sovereign Lord, you have made the heavens and the earth by your great power and outstretched arm. Nothing is too difficult for you, O God." So I lift my hands to pray for you. We are praying for you, city commissioners and our mayor. We are praying for you in the name of Jesus, that the Lord will touch your hearts, that your hearts will not be hardened to hear his word and to change from our ways that we've adopted recently in the city of Brownsville. I pray, Father, in the mighty name of Jesus. Shalom. I have a prayer for our nation, for each one of you. If you would like to take one, I didn't know if we have the authority or not to pass these out to you. Thank you.
Next, we have Elizabeth Dearlam. She submitted her public comment but did not wish to address the commission.
Thank you.
Next item, we have presentations. First presentation, Carbon Reduction Program Funds, Category 10. Presentation by Director RGB MPO Andrew Cannon.
Howdy, Mayor. Good to see you again. Commissioners, Ms. Ramirez. Came today because it's pretty exciting. We, through the last infrastructure bill that we had, there was a carbon reduction program in there, and we were working with TxDOT to come up with some ways to be able to utilize the funds, and it's for non-added capacity projects. No roadway expansions, those type of things, new roadways. So to try to minimize our carbon footprint on the environment and on the world. So we were happy to be able to work with the city of Brownsville and identified several projects, as you can see up on the screen there, that we're able to use some of the carbon reduction funding for. I want to say that I appreciate staff working with us. We were able to identify the nature trail, Southmost Nature Trail, phases 3, 4, and 5. Now, this is an even swap on money, just for full disclosure. So the $7.5 million is nice, but it's not a net gain for the city. The next two projects, however, the light signalization and the bus curb cuts or the bus burst, it comes to about $1.8 million of additional funding to the Brownsville area. I believe on another slide that we have, and I don't know if I have the, yes, I do. This is where some of the curb cuts are identified. This is Southmost Trail, I apologize. The two portions, 3 phases that we have there to be funding in the near-term future. So we're working with staff to make sure all this stays on time and moving forward in a good manner for the funding that we have, because it does have a timeline. I have nothing here, I apologize. There we go. The red and yellow dots that you see there on your screen are the intersections that through our through our congestion study that we do biannually, identified within the city of Brownsville that needed some attention. These would be in the way of GPS clocks, new detection systems, or new full cabinets. To be able to replace those and get going forward with this, as you can see, quite a few on FM 802, Price Road, and of course, State Highway 48 and then on Business 77, and some on International Boulevard as well. So we will be working with staff to go through these and make sure that the city is has the same alignment on the priority of these projects that we do through our congestion study, and make sure that you're ready to move forward with that. And I think there's another slide with a table. My remote's not working, I apologize. No? Okay. Okay, I thought there was another one I had to break down financially. I saw it on the agenda, but that's okay. So we'll be working with loops, which is the detection systems that you see cut on into pavement at the intersections, to be able to pick that up with more traffic replacement or brand new cabinets where appropriate. And then GPS clocks to be able to get some synchronization so we can improve the traffic flow through the city. So once, you know, ideally what we hope is when your light turns green, it turns green sequentially for you down the corridor, and then the same thing with the red. And of course, that helps with carbon reduction a lot. There's quite a few intersections throughout the valley to where we don't have any detection, and you know, you're sitting there at 9 o'clock at night to get home or whatever, and the light is red and you're stuck because it just goes to a default timing instead of detecting you and letting you move on through. And of course, we know idled vehicles are not very good for the environment. So that's how we were able to work with Federal Highways and convince them of this. So
Mr.
that's really
Cannon,
it. We'll continue.
I
Yes, sir.
think the slide you're looking for with the finances is 3 slides back.
Okay, I thought there was, I don't have any control. I'm sorry, my remote's not working.
This one here?
No, I thought there was a table, but it's okay.
Okay.
There was a table in the packet. It's called
There was a
RGB
table in the
appeal
packet?
signalization cost proposal.
That's it. Okay, good. At least you have that. So, and that's perfectly fine. It gives you the breakdown of the amount of money to be spent on each one of those phases. We estimate cabinets at about $20,000, for example. There's a number there. So we'll work with your staff to identify those and also make sure of where we are on the price points. If they're higher, of course, that means a couple of fewer cabinets will be able to be purchased, but still overall for the community, it's definitely a win-win. And I think the great thing that's there is about 35% of the overall funding that was available to us came to the Brownsville area. So being the largest city in the valley and growing the way that the Brownsville area is in the surrounding area, it's a fantastic thing. And we really appreciate Metro working with us too, with the curb cuts for the buses, because we think that that's really important where we have corridors with only 2 lanes to be able to move those buses out of the way to safely pick up and drop off people, but allow traffic to flow through freely and not hold them up idling, sitting there as well. So I can't thank the staff enough for working with us on it. And with that, I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Andrew, thank you so much. This is great news for our community. How long do you think it'll take to get the equipment for the traffic synchronization?
Wow, Mayor, you came heavy with the first one. Okay. That's probably going to take the longest out of everything. I'm actually hoping to sit down with staff. We have some funding in the Harlingen, San Benito area, about $65,000. We're going to try to see, I haven't exposed this to Helen yet, so surprise. We're going to see if Brownsville would be comfortable being the fiduciary lead for both cities, because there's always a discount when purchasing that much equipment. The turnaround that we've heard, like with the city of Edinburgh, with some of their purchases have been 9 to 10 months. If everything goes well from the time that the equipment is ordered. So unfortunately, it won't be next month. I would hope that by this time next year, I'm coming back to the city and we're hopefully talking about how well the synchronization and the new equipment is working for the citizens of Brownsville, and trying to explore additional ways to purchase more equipment to meet the other needs that we have in the region as well. So short answer, Mayor, we're probably 10 months or so on being able to get that equipment from the time it's ordered.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And I have a second question on the Southmost Nature Trail. I think the segment number 5.
Yes, sir.
I know there's a railroad crossing. Has that been resolved 100% with UP or is there?
I
some work to
would
do?
default to your staff on that one, on whether that's been, I know that we had conversations. I don't know that that has been totally, and I don't want to mislead you.
No, it has not been completely resolved.
There we go.
Okay.
Even from afar, she has the information.
Thank you, Commissioner.
What's the time frame? Were you done, Mayor?
Yes.
What's the time frame for the curb cuts, Andrew?
That we will also work with your staff, Commissioner, to make sure, because we do have the 80-20 match on that. So to make sure whether there's any right-of-way situations, any engineering situations, make sure we have all of our i's dotted. That should not take very long, but we just have to make sure we go through the NEPA process to make sure we don't have anything come up on that. I think that all of the right-of-way is owned by the city already, so that makes it a much easier task. So we're hoping for a quick turnaround on that, ma'am.
Kenny, can you come up to the podium and state the right of way?
Good afternoon, good evening. Yes, we do have the right of way at this point, but I will go back and verify. But to my knowledge, at this time, we have the right of way to start the curb cuts. But the funding is allocated in 2027.
I don't remember the year right
Yeah.
now.
I believe the funding that we'll get for the curb cuts will be in 2027. And then we'll need time to plan for the match.
Right.
So,
Yes, it is a and that's a great point. Thank you for saying that. It is a multi-year approach, so I don't want to make it sound like all the funding is available in 2024. So it's a multi-phased approach, and each one of the years of allocation has a 3-year lifespan to it. So for instance, on the 27 allocation, we would actually have until 2030 to complete that. I know it won't take that long, but I'm just saying it does have a 3-year lifespan with that. And it's been part of the conversations that we've had with all of the cities on the allocations that the policy board approved last month on this, is to just assure that we didn't run into any hiccups on anything on the long-range plans that would prevent us from executing that, so we didn't have to return any of those dollars.
Any questions?
All right.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you, Mayor.
Appreciate it.
I would just like to thank staff for many of the traffic synchronization and curb cuts and all those. They were prepared. And so they knew ahead of time when we were asked, this carbon reduction money is available. Are you ready? Because Mr. Candid called multiple cities and we were ready. So the planning that we do ahead of time, sometimes that can be frustrating, but that's actually worked. And here it got us 1.8 million of additional money. And I think that I like to thank staff for being prepared and turning around the data very quickly.
That is a really quick note, Mayor, and I'll just reiterate that really quickly. We had been working with TxDOT, and then they sort of sprung this on us in the day that we had our last policy board meeting. On the 31st, we were given to the end of that day to figure out the allocation. So we had to move very quickly to make sure that we had projects region-wide that could move forward quickly with the earlier funds. Some of the later funds in the out years, like the 27, we have time to be able to work with those, but make sure that they were something that the cities had in their forecast, and it was something that the cities wanted to move forward with. So we do appreciate having something ready for us to be able to come when we did get that windfall of money to move forward with.
Great, thank you.
You know, I do have one more question. On
Yes, sir.
the lights, do we need internet on those? And are we ready to receive that yet there? Helen, are we?
Yes, I think that in the consideration of, we check our Wi-Fi connectivity, and then we have like a booster if it's not adequate. But on today's agenda, as part of the certificates of obligation bond, there's a specific amount of money that will take us. We have kind of older network systems, and if you talk to our director of enterprise applications or IT, the way we're going within this year, next year, we'll be able to have internet connectivity in many public spaces, including roads. And so that will make us more resilient long-term.
So we'll be ready by the time
Yes, sir.
they have.
And
the
on
money.
some of those, Commissioner, that's why we have GPS clocks.
Okay.
Because those GPS clocks will be able to work in lieu of necessarily having like fiber cable to it. And they reset every night at midnight, which keeps the timing of the corridor always where we had it planned at. So in some cabinets, you literally see they look like the old cooker timers. And, it's just the things like that with any timepiece. Over time, you could have one corridor, they get a second off and then 2 seconds or something like that. And the
Yeah.
GPS clocks help us go back to reset that at 0 at night, at midnight, and then be able to keep that timing in synchronization of what we set it at.
Yeah, I think we have a few here who the light goes out and they got to go out there manually to resynchronize. It just takes,
Yes,
it
sir.
takes days and days, so.
Well, it was good that we were able to identify the need because there's a need for a great number of cabinets, which are the big brains, if you will, that you see on the corners and a lot of corridors, where we may not have them right now, but because of the growth that happens so quickly in the area and with the city, it's become prudent now to look at that and get those cabinets installed to be able to address some of those concerns.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, we have presentation and discussion on TANASCA funding rebate plan.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members, city manager. We'd like to take you through a brief cash flow and accounting of the TANASCA funds and how the city received them, and then propose a potential way for maybe dealing with those funds. So from the time period 2013 to 2023, the city of Brownsville received monies that were identified as increases to the base rate from PUB, and it was received over a period of time. You can see from the years up there that sequentially it changed. It started off right at 171,000 in year one, which was 2013. It progressed sequentially 600,000, 900,000. And then you hit the sweet spot in 2017 through 2021, where effectively each year we received a little bit over 1.4 million, which added to the operating funds that the city had to work with. And we'll show you in a sequential slide after this that the PUB funds are just a small portion of our budget. We get a transfer amount, and we'll go to that slide now. You can see up there the transfer amount, the portion that's orange in the pie. We get roughly, this is the FY23 budget. We get roughly $10 million a year, or 9%. The funds that flowed through from TANASCA came through in that transfer. And then on top of that, we get utility service fees for 4.5 million. So as those funds came in, they were used in our operations. In fact, they were used for one-time expenditures. So we did not set up a restrictive account, a segregated bank account to hold these monies because they were never identified to be paid back at a future period of time. In fact, when the city asked PUB what the funds were, they were surpluses in addition to the operating cash flow that were generated. At no point did the city express a need in order to set them aside in restrictive funding. So I want to be clear that the monies that we're talking about here are not sitting in a bank account waiting to be dispersed or sent back to PUB. And then here shows the gradual changes of how the monies were identified, the city cash transfer, the TANASCA equity fund, and then the fuel rate stabilization plan. And it's through the period of years where the money's changed and we got more in the middle years than what we did at the end. And so what is for discussion tonight is due to the monies that were received, the 11.3 million over a period of 10 years, the city, as we're going to present later tonight, is under financial and spectacular growth. In order to fund the growth, we need adequate budget dollars each year to not only keep employees, but to finance that growth. So we're proposing a plan of potentially paying $1 million a year. If you look at the three plans here, they're essentially the same thing. The maximum is $1 million. On the lowest plan, it's $500,000, which would take 22 years. On the next level plan, which is option 1, we would pay $750,000 a year, and that would take us, almost 15 years to pay. And then lastly, option 3, which is the most aggressive one, which is $1 million a year. And the timing of these plans would be after the audit was completed, the numbers were completely vetted out, and we knew for sure the general fund had the surplus. And you can see on the bottom, there's sort of an asterisk or misnomer that in the event of a hurricane or catastrophe, all bets would be off, so to speak, and we'd have to revisit the repayment plan. But tonight, we just wanted to give you a sort of a quick synopsis of what happened over the 10 years, the dollar amount that we believe flowed through from the accounting, and we vetted the numbers with PUB, and then a potential look at how we could deal with those monies going forward and still not restrict the growth of the city and the needs of its citizens.
Thank you so much. I know this is a difficult conversation. You know, I know since the money's already been spent, I think that's the difference between this conversation and the one that PUB had regarding the Tenasca Equity Fund that they had set aside, right? But I think it's an important conversation because this was money that was raised from the public for a project that did not happen, where the city benefited from, right, as well. And I think, you know, I mean, I appreciate the 3 options. I know another option would be, I don't know if we could go out and borrow the $11 million, you know, and then pay it back over time as well, so that there's a one-time distribution, you know, just like PUB did last month, right? So, but I know that affects our, you know, our borrowing capacity and what we can do as a city, right, with our CIP. So that's, you know, that option's not on the slide.
Thank you for your input, and you'll see later tonight when we give the CIP plan just how strategically we went through our CIP, the needs of the citizens, taxpayers, debt capacity, and where we are as a city to take all that into consideration. And maybe you can guide us as a council as what do you want us to do after we're done tonight.
Sure.
Thank you for allowing us to present.
I have a few questions.
Yes, sir.
So let me start with, why are the options we are looking at tonight being funded by sales tax revenue when this came as part of the fund transfer? Why is there not an option where we're considering using fund transfers moving forward to fund this?
We have at our basket full or toolbox worth of financing to use any mechanism, sales tax, property tax, transfers, bridge transfers, you name it. But as you know, in our budgeting process, the needs of the city are met through that. We have a very complex system for our general fund. We use 4 sources. We use property tax, sales tax, the bridge transfer, and then the PUB transfer to sort of make ends meet. And I think the same thing would hold true for repayment. We could look at all sources for repayment. It's just right now we're sort of tapped. This is the first year we've been blessed with very good property tax appraisal values. We'll see what fits when the values are finalized after disputes, but we're open to any suggestion you may have.
And my next question is, and I'm thinking about this from the perspective of this is all city of Brownsville, including PUB, including the 29 million, this is all city of Brownsville. If we're talking about refunding monies that have already been spent, where's the other $30 million? When are we going to see a presentation on that? The $30 million that went to consultants, right-of-way acquisitions, and attorneys. Those monies were spent just like the 11 million has been spent by the city. So if we're going to talk about refunding what's already been spent, when are we going to see that presentation?
And we can request that from
Yes.
PUB, sir.
I think that's a fair request to see a full presentation of the money flows for everything. We'll follow up on your request.
There's no action. This is just a question, getting your feedback so that we can come back to you and then, you know, give you more options and just answer your questions.
I do have another question. You're talking about looking at the monies after we've done the audit. And I mean, as you know, when we do have surpluses, we're trying to do one-time purchases. So how are we going to make sure we don't spend that on a one-time purchase and allow that money to sit there so we can pull it out? I think we have to figure out a way for us to not only just say we're going to do it, but really have a pot where we're putting that money into and not use it unless we really need to use it, not for a one-time purchase, because we always have something we need to buy as a city. So I think we got to be real careful with the wording on it, because we may have, and I'm not saying this is the case at the moment, and I'm not saying it's not, but we may have people right now who say, yes, let's do it. But what happens when the commission changes and 3 years from now, you don't want them to pay this? They'd rather buy a sweeper. So how do we make sure that that money will stay there to be able to pay it back?
That's a great comment. And as you remember, when we were here in mid-year with the mid-year budget amendments, and we went through how sales tax was doing for the year and how it was in surplus of what we budgeted, I think we could use the same approach for repayment here. When sales tax is in surplus of the budget, we could restrict a portion by month to be used for repayment. And that way, council member, we would make sure that those monies are there. It could be labeled as restricted and then audited at the end of the year and then distributed in February and March when the audit's done. So the mechanics of administrating that are really easy, but it's just, dependent upon how well the economy fares and sales tax. Do we ever go into a recessionary period and then, it's a little bit more troublesome. So a lot of factors there, but great concern and great question.
And also what the mayor was saying, I think it is important. We need to look into other options to try to do it a lot faster.
Okay.
I mean, let's put it on the table. Let's take a look at it. Let's see what we can get done. And I know it's not easy, but you're a smart man, so I'm sure you'll figure something out.
Thank you. We'll come back to you with even more suggestions and you can guide us as the direction you want us to go. And then we'll follow up on the request for the full accounting of all the funds flow.
And just a question on our current reserves that we have. I know we're in excess of our policy amounts, right? And that's, we have a healthy balance, right? And so I'm not saying I'm in favor of taking money from that, but I would like to see what our numbers look like currently.
Yes, and in fact, with you heading up the audit committee, we just finished like 3 months ago our 2022 audit, and we were very blessed. We finished the year with 43 million in excess funds for the general fund, which equated to 113 days. Our policy guidelines call for 90 days. It's a little bit of excess, but when I go through our CIP plan and how we're borrowing, I think it's a combination of your financial structure as a city that you have a blend of both things to operate from. One, you have a reserve in cash, and two, you have the capacity to borrow. And our financial advisor will touch on that tonight as well. We like to have access to both because in the event of a hurricane or something, as you know, we're situated on the coast here. Anything could happen. You plan for the worst, a catastrophe. And when that happens, you have to have gunpowder and powder in your disposal in order to use. So yes, we want to pay this back, but we also have to plan for other emergencies of the city as well. So it's a multivariable equation. We'll do what you require, but I think you'll see tonight when we get to the CIP that we've planned ahead and looked at borrowing, and we'll work this into the equation as well.
Great.
Thank you for your time.
We'll also look into any possible impact, and there may be no impact to our bond rating as well as part of that.
Are there any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, we have consent agenda items.
All right.
I'll move to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do you have a
Second.
second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
Next, we have public hearings. Public hearing number 1, public hearing in action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2023-009 to rezone from residential estate to residential transition for a 2.566 acre tract of land out of a 71.17 acre tract of land in the AM Tandy Estate Share 12 Espiritu Santo Grant, located on West Alton Glore Boulevard.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. So this request is for a multifamily development. This property currently has a zoning of residential estate. The request is to rezone to residential transition to be able to accommodate the use. It is fronting West Alton Glore Boulevard. This is the 200-foot buffer map. There were 16 mailouts and 0 written opposition. And just to provide a little bit more context, adjacent to it, to the east, a couple of months ago, we did have another property go through, not a rezoning, but through the PD process to accommodate a multifamily use that was mixed in with commercial uses as well. This is the zoning map. As you can see, the primary zoning is residential, residential estate to the north, residential single family to the south, and some multifamily to the west. And another aerial view. And P&Z did recommend approval to rezone from residential estate to residential transition. Any questions?
The proposed development will not have access to Tandy Road, right? It's only going to be Alton Glory?
That is correct. Yes, sir.
Move to close?
Yep.
We opened already? I'm
No,
sorry.
no, we haven't even opened
Is
it.
there anyone that's here to speak on this item?
Yeah, this is a public hearing.
Yeah.
I'll move to close.
We have a motion.
Second.
In the second, any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say nay.
Move
Ayes
to
have it.
approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion in the second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All
Aye.
those opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
Public hearing number 2, public hearing in action on first reading on ordinance number 235, 2023-010 to rezone from commercial corridor to regional center for Lot 2, Block 1, MG Estate subdivision, located at 7225 Paredes Line Road.
So the proposed use for this property will be an open RV and boat storage. It is fronting Paredes Line Road, and the current zoning is commercial corridor. The required zoning for this use would be regional center. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 25 mailouts and 0 written opposition. This is a zoning map, primarily commercial in the area, some high industrial to the north, light industrial to the east, and single family to the west. Another aerial view. And P&Z did recommend approval to rezone from commercial corridor to regional center.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on this item?
I'll move to close.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
those opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve. Any further discussion? Not all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All
Aye.
those opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
Public hearing number 3, public hearing in action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2023-011 to rezone from commercial corridor to residential single family for Lot 5, Block 1, Military South Subdivision, Phase 1, located at 9795 US Highway 281.
So the request is to rezone from commercial corridor to residential single family. It's actually a down zone from the current zoning. The proposed use is a single family residence. The reason why the rezone is required, commercial corridor does not allow single family residences within that district. The property is fronting US Military Highway. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 18 mailouts and 0 written opposition. And the zoning that predominates is commercial corridor. There's the ETJ to the west, some single family to the south, and agriculture zoning to the northwest. Another aerial view. And P&Z did recommend approval to rezone from commercial corridor to residential single family.
I have a question on that.
Yes.
The only thing is when you do something like this and those residents after, will they not be upset about having used cars next to them? I
Well,
think there's 2 down, right? 2 lots down or next to them.
Yes, these are all existing uses that have been existing for many years. We did do a review on when these were permitted. Most of them were existing even prior to the annexation of the property into the city, as well as the majority of the residences there that currently exist. So they bought into the property knowing the conditions and the surroundings.
Okay, and one other question, that's the right of way, am I right? Is that why there's a space there between the property and the road, Old Military Highway? Or is that just not done right? It looks like a right of way to me.
Yes, it's the additional right-of-way that's dedicated.
Thank you.
All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on this item?
I'll move to close.
We have a motion to close. We have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
Item, public hearing number 4, public hearing in action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2023-012-S to request a specific use permit to allow a used car lot for a 0.883 acre tract of land in blocks 5 and 5A, share 27, El Jardín subdivision, located on South Central Avenue.
So the request for this property, it's not a rezone, it's a specific use permit to allow a used car lot. The property is fronting South Central Avenue. Now, to add some background to the case, this case was presented at the Planning and Zoning Commission where it was denied. And so the developer did decide to appeal. They appealed the following day when they found out that the case had been denied, and therefore it was moved forward to the commission for review. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 14 mailouts and 0 written opposition. We did have verbal opposition at the P&Z meeting. The concern of the neighbor was the type of business that was coming in, potential vehicle clutter, the typical comments that we receive regarding used car lots. This is a zoning map. There is traditional neighborhood and residential single family to the northwest. There's residential suburban to the east and to the south. And so this is the aerial view. And the closest use that staff found was a tow company that's it's 3 properties away to the north. And the closest car lot that we found was 1,800 feet away. This is the proposed car lot. And P&Z did recommend denial. However, if it is approved today, staff did recommend to P&Z and we recommend to the commission the following conditions. We did propose or we presented these conditions as we have done for these types of development before. We presented it to the developer and they agreed to abide by them. Any questions?
Are these conditions we're asking for, are they consistent with previous cases that are similar to this, or what
Yes.
we're asking?
Yes, sir.
And my second question is also, are the verbal oppositions that were made at the P&Z Commission, are those also notated, like they're taken on the record?
Yes. Yes, they are.
My only concern with this is that the corner there of Central and Morningside, there's traffic constantly going in and out of that thoroughfare because there's Minnesota and Morningside, and you have schools on one side and you have the airport that has constant traffic. My concern is that the clutter, like the neighbor is saying, we don't want to see roads along the path, especially busy roads, have a lot of cars along residential areas, especially when all the properties around it are residential as well. That's just my concern with it.
And those are very valid concerns, Commissioner, specifically when it's within a residential neighborhood. You have homes in the front, homes to the sides. And so the question is, is this the most appropriate use for that, for the existing land uses around it?
All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on this item? Please state your name for the record.
Yeah, my name is Paco Aldape. I'm representing case number 235-2023-012 SUP. And I'm requesting consideration to open a used car lot. As
I'm
Mr.
sorry,
Vega
yeah.
mentioned,
Can you
the
please
property-
speak? Can you
Oh, sorry.
speak in the mic? Yeah.
As mentioned, Mr. Vega, the property is 0.88 acres in size. It will site to a used car lot consisting of one 225 square foot office building and no more than 39 parking spaces for inventory and customer parking as permitted by the UDC. We are in agreement and will be in compliance with all of the recommendations suggested by staff. And one important thing to point out is unlike other used car lots, ours has sufficient size to organize inventory without having clutter. But most importantly, it's big enough to unload vehicles within the property without having to unload inventory on the actual street. As I've seen many smaller car lots unloading their vehicles within the right of way, which creates unsafe condition to other drivers. I would also like to point out that it's big enough to have inventory. Wait, hold on. It's big enough to not have inventory piled up outside of the property within the right of way, blocking sidewalks or as other car lots do. And from whatever we have seen, this situation has recently been approved by the commission. In this area, there are many uses. Yes, some single family, but the majority commercial, such as multifamily, a trailer park, restaurants, tortillerias, notaries, mechanic shops, and tow truck company, about 4 properties away, and even car lots no more than 1,500 feet away. Therefore, all we are asking for is an opportunity to start our business the right way. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question. We've had somebody who's already, this for you, somebody who applied for something like this was approved. And then they came back and they said, hey, it's gonna be too expensive to put the walls on the side. Have you considered that?
Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Can you go back to the slide with the conditions that we're asking? And I'm just curious, how do we go about like enforcing this, or how do we keep up with it?
So after the case is approved, they will have to submit a site plan for site review. At that point in time, it gets distributed to all the departments involved for any site review and building review. And so we check that these conditions are met. If not, the permit is not issued, and as the final CO would not be issued as well.
Thank you.
Can you go back one more slide? So the P and Z denied this request and the developers appealing
Yes,
to us?
that's correct.
directly? Okay, just want to make sure.
And what was the opposition that you mentioned? How much was it? Because I know if there's a certain amount of opposition, then it raises the threshold that's required for approval. Are we looking at that tonight?
No, it was just one
Okay.
individual. Yes.
None of them were written, so it's actually 0.
All right, is there anyone else that wishes to speak? All right.
I'll move to close.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. I'll entertain a motion on this item.
I move to deny.
All right, we have a motion tonight. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
Public hearing number 5, public hearing in action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2023-013 to rezone from residential single family to residential suburban for 2.048 acres of land in Block 39, Share 27, El Jardín subdivision, located at 290 North Central Avenue.
The request of this case would be to rezone the property from residential single family to residential suburban. The purpose is to establish a duplex subdivision on the property. It is fronting North Central Avenue. There were 200 I'm sorry, this is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 45 mailouts and 0 written opposition. Staff does want to point out that there is other multifamily developments in the surrounding area. The primary zoning within the area is residential single family, but there is also residential transition, which allows multifamily use directly abutting to the east and some to the southwest. There is also commercial corridor to the south.
We have a commissioner that I'd asked to table this item, Commissioner Macias, who's this project, where this project lies, but we still wanted to enter the public hearing, but recommend no action and table the action until July 11th. Just sorry for that interruption. I just want to make sure we set that in the record.
This is another aerial view. And P&Z did recommend approval to rezone from residential single family R1 to residential suburban.
All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on this item?
Move to close public
Mayor?
hearing.
No, before we close, I'm going to move to continue the public hearing until July 11th, 2023. That way it continues so we don't have to repost and re-advertise.
All right, we have a
Second.
motion and a second.
Just to confirm, that will be at 5 PM?
That is correct. July 11, 2023, 5 p.m.
All right, we do have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
Item number 6, public hearing in action on first reading on ordinance number 235-2023-904 to rezone from agriculture to residential suburban for a 0.94 acre tract out of a 5.66 acre tract being in Santander Townside Barreda Gardens subdivision located on FM 1421.
So this is a city-initiated case. As mentioned before, all city-initiated cases, the intention behind them is to reestablish property rights that existed before the UDC. So in this situation, the rezone is going from agriculture to residential suburban to allow a duplex. Now, before the UDC was established, this use would have been allowed on the property. So this property is fronting FM 1421. This is a 200-foot buffer map. There were 14 mailouts and 0 written opposition. The zoning that predominates is agriculture. There is residential single family to the northeast and the ETJ directly to the north. Another aerial view of the property. And P&Z did recommend approval to rezone from agriculture to residential suburban.
Just out of curiosity, Martin, since this is returning it to what it was pre-UDC, did the applicant have to pay a fee to apply for rezoning?
No, sir.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on this item?
I'll move to close.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all those in favor, please say aye.
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 I move
Aye.
to approve.
All those opposed say nay. Carried.
Oh, sorry.
We have a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and second. Any further discussion? Not all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
Next, we have items for individual consideration.
Thank you.
Item number 1, consideration and action to approve a special city commission work session to be held on July 25th, 2023.
The special work session is a request from our finance department as part of the budgetary process. It is a work session, so there's a little bit more flexibility with regard to being online or being present.
I'll move to approve.
All right, we have a
Second.
motion and a second. Any
Second.
further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
Next item, we have consideration and action for the approval of the 2023 drainage policy and construction details for the city of Brownsville. Documents for the engineering services on the updating of the policy were presented by Sigler, Winston, Greenwood, and Associates.
Good afternoon, Mayor Commissioners.
This policy update is renewing our policy from our existing one to our 2023 drainage policy, which will change our drainage requirements from a 5-year storm drainage design to a 50-year storm drainage design. This is to be in line and be ready for all the drainage improvements we have coming up with the Texas Water Development Board. In addition to that, this is very similar to the requirements that are the City of Harlingen and City of McAllen. Although it does appear to be an increase of 1,000% from going from a 5-year to a 50-year design, the requirements for capacity and storage are not exactly at that same rate. Currently, most of our city falls under the jurisdiction, or most of the development is occurring in the drainage district, which has a 10-year requirement. So the comparison that you see here from on the city policy is a little bit higher than what is actually going to take place for our residents whenever they do development. The current increase right now for a 10-acre site, you're looking at an increase in detention of 34,000 cubic feet. In reality, that increase will be a little bit less if you compare it to the drainage district policy. It'll roughly be about 150% increase, not a 300% increase that you see from our current policy to the new proposed policy. On a 100-acre development, the increase is proportionate. The difference is obviously a larger acreage because of a larger acre size. This is 10 times the size of the acreage that we're looking at in a 100-acre development. Therefore, the increase would be 200,000 cubic feet. Percentage-wise, you're looking at about a 300% increase. In addition to the drainage policy update, the policy itself does have requirements for floodplain development and floodplain management. In addition to the floodplain management, we do have requirements for our dumpsters and how they drain into our storm sewer drainage system. Aside from that, we are also including our construction details. In the construction details, that's really just formalizing a lot of the typical construction details for our pavement sections, for our storm sewer pipe, and the types of materials we typically use in the city of Brownsville already. There's no major changes to what is currently being done. We did add a section to utility patching. That way we have defined standards for utility patching. In other words, whenever we have any of our utility companies come in and do patchwork, you know, if they damage or repair a certain area of the street, we'll have limits to what those repairs have to abide by now. And the idea of this is to fall in line with similar to that of TxDOT requirements. If y'all have any questions, I'll be more than glad to answer them at this time.
You said that this is more in line with what Harlingen and McAllen currently have as standards?
Their development standard is a 50-year drainage design. That's what the city of McAllen adopted, I'd say roughly about a year ago. City of Harlingen, about the same timeline, adopted that. I know the Cameron County also adopted a policy that's very similar. However, in the county, there are drainage districts that have different requirements. Our drainage district that's here, Cameron County Drainage District number 1 is currently at a 10-year drainage design. Our recommendation is to go in line with most of the municipalities at 50-year drainage design.
Is this something that, did you talk with the development community about this, about this?
We've had numerous workshops, public forums, and it has been discussed with a lot of our local developers and that have attended the public workshops. We've been working on this for roughly about 18 months now, so it's not something, I know for our new commissioners, it's probably the first time they hear of it, but we did have a public forum roughly about 8 months ago. And then the last workshop that we had here at the City Commission, the request was to show a comparison of what the development would be like for a 10-year site or for a 10-acre site and a larger site. We chose a 100-acre, which is roughly about the average size of the large developments that we tend to see here in the city.
I know this is something that I've been pushing for since right after being elected, so I'm glad we're finally here. Thank you for that. 2 things. One, do we anticipate the lower standards that the drainage district has causing problems for us as a city or for those homeowners who are in those developments?
Well, the drainage standards are for subdivision developments. So this existing subdivisions do not need to comply with these requirements. They will stay the way they currently are right now. This is for new development. So the impact would be to the developers of these new developments. The existing property owners would maintain their current drainage system that they have.
But even for new development, do we anticipate that the lower standards of the drainage district will create problems for us or for homeowners?
Not for us as a city, because when they do the submittals, they have to comply with the more stringent requirements. The city, in this case, would now be the more stringent requirement.
Very good. And my other is, and I know you and I have talked about this before, I encourage also policies that require new development to put in those dips that help with drainage, but also act as speed dips so that it deters speeding in neighborhoods.
So yeah, that's not in our policy, but we do look at those ways of managing and doing what we call road diets, or being able to manage traffic in the neighborhoods a little bit better to, one, reduce the number of on-street parking, and also how we manage the traffic flow.
Yeah, I would consider, depending on how this continues to develop, consider adding that to the policy if it's necessary to avoid having to build more speed bumps, because I know we prefer the dips to the humps because they also serve the purpose of aiding with drainage.
One of the things we have done to limit that is the length of a straightaway. It is at 1,000 feet now.
Any questions or comments? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doral.
Item number 3, consideration and action to discuss and approve resolution number 2023-075, authorizing publication and posting of notice of intention to issue certificates of obligation to finance certain capital improvements.
Good evening again. We have a joint proposal. I'll give you some background information and then our financial advisor will close it out. But I wanted to start off by saying that the CIP committee and the bond issuance process that we've gone through is a procedure the city manager and all its committee participants takes very, very seriously. And the city commission has already given us sort of a framework in which to execute to. There's a 5-year plan. We're now looking at issuing year 3 of that plan and then bringing forward year 4, and that's part of our proposal tonight. The committee and the city manager have a tough job. They had departments on that committee with a lot of needs, and it's, more eloquently said or more simply said, all the babies need new shoes. And you look at what's needed. We need buildings repaired. We have equipment to be purchased. We have roads that need to be repaired, and everybody wants something, and it's hard to keep everybody happy. But I thought they did just a fantastic job looking at needs, evaluating them. Where is there an ROI? Where is it absolutely necessary to replace? And then they made a recommendation. And on top of that, they didn't use all of the funds that we believe we have available for borrowing capacity. So we looked at it in terms of a strategic direction. We looked at council asked us to do. Helen looked at where the needs were and she decided, and there were tough decisions, but the members gave input. And then on top of that, we looked at where we are in the fiscal year. We're moving into a new year with our taxes. We have to coordinate our tax rate so that we go to the residents with that new tax rate in advance of October 1st. So there's a lot of moving parts here, and my hats are off to the city manager and the CIP committee in trying to coordinate everything correctly. And I think they did just an excellent job. And I will go back one more time and just re-emphasize the point about borrowing too much. Again, we're on the coast. We could have a catastrophe event, a hurricane. And when you have an event like that and you have access to funds, which we do, more than likely you're going to get predatory interest rates and higher than what you need. So we have to have monies in the bank. And we mentioned earlier this evening that our completed audit, we're at 43 million. A large portion of that 43 million is not restricted, so we have access to those funds. We're also 113 days. As you remember, for those people who participated in our budget committee, our goal is 90. So anything above that you're probably hanging on to too much money, but we're a little bit conservative there. So with that backdrop, I think we're in a very good position to execute. We have an upcoming budget period that we're going to put forth all of our needs as well. But tonight, we want to just go through that CIP plan, what it consists of, where the majority of the dollars are, and give public exposure to where their taxpayer dollars are planning to be spent.
I'm gonna give the finance department kudos because they went really back and forth on what is that, what is the property value that we were proposing in coordination with our FA. So all that background was utilized in the determination of where we would try to use those funds.
So one thing you don't see up there is where the monies are going specifically with regards to roads. But let me walk you through what we're doing. We have FY23. Again, this is year 3 of a 5-year plan. And so we have to receive the monies in September before October 1st. And our financial advisor has guided us that we need 45 days, or he needs 45 days to work the process. So when you look at the numbers tonight, it says 30.2 million, and we're actually requesting 31 million. The reason we're doing that is that the financial markets are turbulent. They don't know when we go to market in August, or if we have to go after Labor Day, what they're going to see. We may need a discount rate. We may issue the bonds to a premium. So they need that little flexibility between our request of 30.2 million and the 31 million in order to make it work. So I wanted to make sure that was clear and clarified to everybody. But in that 10 million, there's $4 million of road projects going to Public Works. It's 3.6 million of road and 400,000 of sidewalks. And then on top of that, there's $100,000 for beautification. And it's all structured from how our CIP plan was planned 5 years ago and where the monies would go. And on top of that, we don't want to make the same mistake. We want to get FY24 monies available to us right now so that we don't wait. And then we can do the road construction timely at the beginning of the fiscal year. So again, in this 10 million, there's another 4 million. So you got 4 million, 4 million is 8. And then on top of that, Old Highway 77, which is a project for $11 million, we have $4.5 million here. So 8 and 4.5 million bring us to 12.5. And on top of that, Doro in his operating budget for next year has over $2 million of monies for roads. So the point of all this is, as a city, we're spending $14.5 million on roads. And that money is going to be appreciated by the citizens in terms of better driving conditions. And it's also going to be visualized and experienced by those people who visit our city. And we have upcoming Texas games and things of that nature. So our city manager and its team thinks we're putting those monies to real good use. On top of that, we had talked earlier tonight about a $3.7 million network project. And that may not sound sexy, but what it really does is it brings us to the next stage. It brings us to a 5G network, and it also brings us to better reliability of our system. We're never going to go down for a day where the city will not have revenue and have services to deliver because of the new network. And on top of that, another huge advantage is it will allow for better synchronization of our street lights and the red, green, and the changing. So a lot of neat things that can be delivered through this. And the reason it's 2.2 million versus 3.7 is that it's a 2-year project. We will only borrow monies when we need it. We're not going to borrow monies in advance of needing it and have it sitting in the bank and then paying interest. So that's why we're just looking at year 1. So the collective total of that first group is 26.7 million. And again, we have buses up there and you look at that, well, why is that 1 0? We have 33 buses in the city's fleet. And the goal for the city is to, over a 10, 11-year period of time, is replace 3 a year. So over an 11-year period, we've replaced them all. And in the demand-supply relationship of buses right now, it takes a while to get a bus. It takes 12 to 18 months. And we can put in a purchase order now, have a letter of commitment, but we don't have to pay for it until 18 months from now. So that's why we show it as 0, but next year when we come back, most likely we'll have dollars in there for this bus purchase. But again, just trying to show that we're using the city's money in a very prudent manner. The next one, Helen loves, I love, it's a match for the zoo. You know, when you look at the zoo, there's 4 prongs of really financial funding there. There's the zoo's operating cash flow, there's trust, there's the city, and there's endowments and donations. So we're trying to pony in our monies, the $2 million, in hopes that we'll get a match for that later on. We think it's a good use of our funds. And then lastly, there's 1.5 million there for historic buildings that we already own. There's more buildings in the city that need work, but we think this is a good utilization of our funds. So again, all told, 30.1 million. The borrowing amount that we're asking for is 31 million. If you look at, and I sort of went through, where the monies were going in total, but we have two $10 million packages here. We have a 10 million from FY23 and a 10 million from FY24. And you can break the spending categories for each year into three categories. There's heavy equipment, there's streets and drainage, which we talked a large part about, and then there's technology. So in the heavy equipment, sort of moving very top to bottom from engineering, Doro's department and public works, we have a backhoe of 306,000. We have two street sweepers at collectively 274,000. A sanitation truck at 200. Every year we seem to have a need for ambulances. We have two collectively at 450. And then we want to replace the fire truck for Station 6 at 890. The total of everything there is $2.1 million. And then moving down into streets and drainage, we talked about the 3.6 million for the streets, $400,000 for the trail. We've got beautification at 100,000 and then additional drainage at 451. So the total portion of streets alone there is 7.6 with streets and drainage, 4.1 really being streets and the rest representing drainage. And then moving on collectively, technology brings up the remainder at 328,000. So all told, that's 10 million. Those were the dollars that are year 3 of the 5-year capital plan that was approved 3 years ago. And the thing I also want to point out to the public and to the commissioners is that the plan 3 years ago is at different dollars. We've been experiencing heavy inflation for the last 3 years, and it's not 1 year of inflation, it's compounded. You get 10% 1 year on top of 7, and then top on a 3rd year, and collectively you're looking at huge numbers. And the inflation varies. There's inflation for food, gasoline, but we're experiencing inflation on cement products and labor, and the inflation rate on labor was actually much higher than the overall core inflation. So some of the things that we're facing and trying to go ahead and complete these projects for you. Lastly, we're looking at that year 2024, which happens to be year 4 of the capital plan and bringing that forward. In heavy equipment there, we have 2.3 million rounded. It consists of a milling machine at 400,000, a Dover oil at 200, an excavator at 300, a backhoe at 105, a crack and seal machine at 100, and a dump truck at 120. So you see all those items are heavy equipment. They take a while to order. Chances are we're not going to receive these things next week. It's going to be a while before we get to utilize them and put them into place. But we think when the items are in place, we'll have better efficiencies and lower expenditures on repairs because obviously we have newer equipment. In like year 3, we have a replacement rescue truck for 640. And again, we have 2 more ambulances of 400. So everything there brings us to 2.3 million. Lastly, on the streets and drainage, that category total is 7.4. We have a USGS total stream gauging equipment at 390, an Impala system, which is really for pumping for water, 2.5 million. We have a USGS hydrological water and operating modeling machine, which basically we're using the data and incorporating that and how do we best utilize it for 430. Again, the street reconstruction, which consists of the base streets, the trails, and the beautification, bringing our total to 7.4. And then on top of that, the 340 for technology, and that one's in Parks and Recreation for 340, bringing the total to 10. So thank you for your patience. We work hand in hand with our financial advisor. He's going to bring some of the numbers together, talk about market conditions, where we are in our borrowing capacity. And again, this is a whole process. It's the city manager, it's the CIP committee, it's finance. We work together with you, council, and giving us direction where we want to go. So it's not just one person sitting in a room and trying to spend money. So thank you, everyone, for participating. And we'd like to introduce Noe, our advisor.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the commission. Noe Hinojosa for the record with Strider Hinojosa and Company. As I worked as my assistant tonight, and Jay Juarez, our bond lawyer, who prepared the notice for you. I guess as Mike, Mr. Delmo gave you this breakdown on the various projects. We discussed that with him and city manager. And today, as we speak, when you look at the city's debt payments, today they're about 21,598 in 23. And if you were to do nothing this year, your payments would drop to about 20 million and a half. So in an effort to provide you with guidance as to how much can we afford this 30 million too, the question is yes, you have a very formidable debt service schedule with all the loans that you have outstanding. You could say that the debt service requirements of the city today look like a water slide at Wet and Wild, it's just dropping. So if you're to sustain the current revenues of the city, anything you would add on it will be, as long as it's within that levy, that tax levy, and we couldn't do enough thanks also to JIBIC and BCIC, hopefully. In their transfers over, they help us offset what you otherwise be required to raise in property taxes. So as you can see here, if you go to the second column from right to left, today, the tax rate is about 2644. So part of your 67 total tax rate, 2644 is for debt service. The plan now considers that if you were to go from 2644 to 25 cents, you can afford that 30 million too. What's important to us as we present your credit over to the rating agencies, which by the way, Moody's and Standard & Poor's are your rating companies, and they got you in the AA category level. Basically, they're going to appreciate the fact that you're lowering the tax rate, that you have a nice plan for the next 3 years at least, that you can afford to do not only this 30 million too. So the impact on the taxpayers is going to be negligible, if any at all. In this particular case, the tax rate will drop. So right now, when you look at the third column at the very top, you'll see on the fourth row a TIC of 465. That's the interest rate that we think you may be able to get. And we won't know that until about 40, 50 days from now, if you were to approve this notice. And the 465 today, it's a good 75 basis points, 65 basis points over current market rates. We just sold some bonds for the city of Arlington and city of McKinney up in North Texas, and they got a rate of about 360, 365 thereabouts. We're looking at you rated at 465. You know, their ratings are AAA, yours are AA category. So I'll suspect that you'll be somewhere in the neighborhood, if you were to sell today, at about 375, 380. But having said all that, what's even more important is the fact that if you do this financing in the next couple of months, for that matter, the capacity for future years to address other issues, other needs, and that's why it's important to have a very active CIP. We believe that you would at least have another $50 million of capacity to do projects in the future, the next couple of years. And that's a function, again, of a growing property base, a very manageable debt service portfolio, payments, and basically good planning. So that's where we are today. I couldn't say enough again for JIBIC helping us out and BCIC. I think that's still in the works, right, Marcela?
That's correct. Finance director and I met with many of the different board members. They toured the airport. They recognize that that's an asset for economic development in the city. And so we have signed an agreement with the Greater Brownsville Center Corporation for that support. We will be asking BCAC to do the same. And so, but actually taking them through the why, right, of the request and understanding that that asset is good for the whole city and economic development. So we'll be pursuing that this month.
So going back to the water slide comment that I made, that's the graph. The bars on the graph on the right-hand corner, that's the bars are your principal and interest payments. And you notice how that slopes down. The red line plus the blue line, which is the transfers in from BCIC, or JIBIC, I'm sorry, that's what makes the capacity to be able to do more in the ensuing years, as you so choose. So in order to get there, the law requires you to publish a notice of intent, and that's been put together by McCall, your bond counsel, and Jay Juarez is here with us. And basically, if you were to approve the notice tonight, after this presentation, the notice is before you, then we will publish the notice on June 25th, this Sunday, and then on or about the week of the 14th, that's where we will sell these bonds, and probably be a public auction and see who gives us the lowest bid. And I'll conclude with that. And any questions you may have?
The 25 cents that we're looking at, can we go back to that slide?
Yes, sir.
I'm curious because that means we'll be setting a tax rate that's lower than it's been in any of the last 4 years. And I see Michael coming up.
We don't know for sure what's going to happen with our property tax valuations. However, we're trying to be prepared in advance. And as Noe so eloquently presented, we have some wiggle room. We have debt falling off this year that we have to replace. And then we had a nice increase in property tax valuations. The number from last year was 8.4 billion. And the preliminary number that we're working with now is 9.8. But the dispute process isn't over. So we have to really see where it settles before we can give you a firm rate. What Noe's doing is just modeling potentially what it could look like. And when they're finalized, we'll come back to you with a suggestion. And the math is a little bit tricky when it's up or down or interest rates. They sort of plow the differential into the first year principal to make the numbers work. But we're just using this for modeling purposes. Did you want to add any more?
Yeah, I think, as you can see, there's a very nice window of you having to make a policy decision on whether you want to go down to 25 cents or stay at 26.44. As Mr. Delmore has stated, you got property values that are working in your favor. I mean, I've never seen in my 30-year plus history of Brownsville values at this level. So kudos to you. And I think the way the economy is growing in this town of ours is going to be incredible what to see as far as future values. So I think the suggestion was made, okay, let's work with 25, see what that does. And obviously it's pretty manageable, as you can see.
And this 25, this is an INS, and M&O is where we're capped at 3.5% growth in revenue, correct?
The 3.5% cap on growth is for M&O.
Okay.
This one's bounded, if you will, by the 10% property tax homestead exemption. The other thing I wanted to point out is our overall tax rate right now going into this year is 0.69 and change. And it's one of the higher ones in the valley. You look at McAllen, it's considerably lower in the 0.4 ranges. And our purpose for modeling at this level is to try to bring it more competitive. Because as businesses look to relocate, as people and families look to relocate, they look at those things. What is your tax rate? So we're looking at the citizens' best interest when we model these things as well.
No, and I understand that. And tax rates is definitely something that they look at, but quality of life is as well. And that's everything else from the streets to, for pet lovers, animal parks, pet shelters, things of that nature. So I just want to make sure we're not cutting the rate just for the sake of cutting the rate, but we are actually meeting all the needs we can before we start cutting.
Commissioner.
So as we work on that moving forward, just keep that in mind. That's what I'm going to be looking at, because I know we've got a laundry list of things and we can't do it all. And of course, there's not enough construction companies to do every road in Brownsville if we wanted to in 12 months. But are there any other projects in the city that need attention that we could fund if we didn't drop more than we need to?
And we'll look at that. And I'll also say, if you look at the CO project that we're proposing, I always talk about fixing the cracks in the foundation, but also accelerating our economy. So the quality of life projects, which is the zoo or the historic preservation of public spaces, it's both, right? And so, your question is well taken.
Yeah.
What it's capacity that we have, and is there something that we need to really look at and fit in there? And we're going through all the budgetary process with every single department this week and next week. So we're going to be looking at those hard numbers. Is there something that we can say, you know what, we really do, that really can't wait? It'll come to you and we'll talk about that. There's other ways of also funding our facilities. That's not specifically COs. So that other way is also important, that we would still be funding improvements. We're just going to use another mechanism to do it.
Now, let's talk about those as we work through this.
Commissioner, to add to your question and Helen's response, the other item we have in our toolbox is BCIC. You know, we mentioned that their prior debt was $360,000 per year that they were contributing to. What Helen is trying to do, we're going to meet with their board members prior to their next meeting, is get them to re-up for the same commitment that GBIC did. And that commitment of 360 will actually add a little bit over $1 million to our borrowing capacity. So we, again, we'll think we'll have more gunpowder. And if you think we need to borrow more for more projects, as I started this presentation, our list of needs is humongous. We're just trying to be prudent to measure all things here. Give us borrowing capacity, give the citizens what they need, give employees what they need to work, and give the departments the equipment that they need. And it's a multi-variable equation and not an easy one to solve. And not everyone's going to be happy, but we try to do the best we can with what we have to work with.
Yeah, I appreciate the effort. Thank you.
So I guess in following this presentation, if there are any questions on the notice itself, I think Mr. Delmore did a good job of telling you we're looking for a little bit more just in case. It's not to pay our fees or anything. It's just a matter of what the market will do at the time we sell the bonds. But the objective is to get you 30.2 million of project funds. Did I miss anything, Jay? All good? So if you're okay with this presentation, we will need a support for the notice of intent to be published.
All right.
I'll move to approve.
Second.
And a second, any further discussion? Not all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Item number 4, consideration and action to discuss and approve resolution number 2023-074, expressing official intent to reimburse with tax exempt obligation proceeds costs associated with certain capital improvements.
Good evening. This action item number 4 is a companion item to the item you just listened to. And what it really allows, we talked about the heavy equipment in a lot of our capital requests. It takes time to receive those items. It allows for the city in advance of the 45-day period of receiving the issuance from the bonds, the actual cash involved, to order things in advance. We take it seriously. We look at lead time, but we don't go and submit everything on this proposal in advance. It requires a city manager's approval, the review of both the finance director and myself, and it has to be vetted out for a real reason why we would order in advance. And that's what this proposal is doing. We also would like to introduce our bond counsel, who will give you the laws regarding this and make sure and make it clear to you that what we're doing is okay within the legislative laws that we operate under. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Delmore. Mayor, Commissioners, a brief introduction. My name is Jay Juarez. I'm an attorney with McCall Parkerston Horton. I have the privilege of serving Israel's bond counsel. I looked up the history from my firm, and I think we've represented you guys since 1966. So my dad was like 9 years old at the time. I've been involved with you guys for about 8 years. So to touch on this item very briefly, Mr. Delmore did hit the high points already. This allows you all to expend proceeds actually now or 60 days prior to today if you all had incurred anything that is covered within your notice. So that would be April 21st. You all could reimburse yourselves on closing, which I believe is September 7th. When you all get money in the bank from these COs, you can use those funds to reimburse whatever y'all have expended until then. And that is both a requirement, this action you're taking tonight is a requirement both by state law and federal law. With that said, happy to answer any questions you all may have.
All right, thank
I'll
you.
move to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all those in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Thank you.
Next item, we have consideration and action to approve a contract for depository services for up to 5 years with one of the following banks listed in alphabetical order: J.P. Morgan Chase, Lone Star National Bank, Plains Capital Bank, PNC Bank, and/or Texas Regional Bank, and authorize city manager to negotiate and execute the contract.
All right, I have a conflict on this item, so I'm going to step out. So I'm going to hand the keys to
Very good.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Go ahead, Michael. I'm acting as Mayor Pro Tem while the mayor's out of the room.
My goal tonight is to explain the process, give you the scores, and then you can give us direction. We had a 5-member team that evaluated the submission of the banking proposals for the depository agreement. And those people evaluated the contracts independently with no conversation amongst each other. And some of the things they looked for were banking services fees, months of waived service fees, minimum balance requirements, what the structure was for judging the service fee, and then, you know, everyday transactions. What did you charge for ACH, secondary ACH, and what did you charge for wires? Interest earnings is a little bit more complicated because it's not just pure interest earnings, is what were the minimum balance requirements. When interest rates change, what is it pegged to? Is it pegged to the Fed funds rate, or is it pegged to T-bills rates? And all the banks had different answers, and some move at different paces of others in trying to reflect those changes. And then is it a fixed rate or a variable rate? And then are there collateral requirements above and beyond some of the other banks? So not everything was just black and white. Banking services capability was a third category. In this day and time, the safety of funds, there's been 3 banks that have failed over the last 6 months. Daily cutoff times, often we work late. If you have a cutoff time at 7 p.m., that's a little bit more favorable for the city. Ease of system use, how easy it is to navigate on your system. Do you use AI to monitor fraud and things of that nature? Often these systems are very, very sophisticated, and if they told us that AI was used to monitor fraud, it'd carry a little bit of extra weight. The use of positive pay is another fraud detection item. And then a dedicated service team where there are members on that team dedicated to the city alone, and that depending upon our needs, they were all available? Or were you given a number in New York to call and then you fend for yourself to see if you can reach somebody? Customer service in today's age is huge, and a lot of banks have the same services, so we valued that one. And then the timeline that it took to implement new services, we looked at that as well. And then a disaster recovery plan, what's in place for that, that the city would have to follow. The last thing was creditworthiness of a bank. And you know, in years past, banks were all insured and we thought they would never fail, but we had to look at that a little bit closer and event what's happened to the public recently. The last item was added, which was a presentation capacity for every one of the banks. And we had a team, the same team of people, of 5 people, listen to the presentations. We looked for a level of preparation, the direct answering of questions. They avoid the question and answer it a different way. Enthusiasm's hard to hide. Did you smile? Did you appear to be energetic? Do you want our business? That means a lot to us because we want to work with people that want our business. And the quality and depth of the bid package. Was it a canned presentation that was done by your home office? Did it have individual attention to the city of Brownsville? We look for those things because we want the individual care that we believe that we deserve. And how well were the questions read that in advance of what we prepared? And again, that structure of the customer care team, and how did you communicate to our questions? We placed a huge quotient on customer care and then the performance of that customer care. Lastly, I'm just going to give you where the scores fell out. Again, we had 5 different individuals, and 3 of the people had a finance background, 1 of the people had an IT background, and a 5th member runs one of our businesses that's service oriented. And because of that, we all look at things a little bit differently, and our scores pretty much came out in group pretty close to how we looked at it individually. But one-on-one, they all look different. But J.P. Morgan Chase and PNC Bank were real close to the top, you know, almost in a horse race finish, if you will. And then Plains Capital, Lone Star Bank, and Texas Regional Bank were the other 3 banks involved. And with that, I'm going to close it out and say we're at the direction of your decision as to where you want to direct the city manager and how we should proceed.
And let me start with, so we don't have a quorum present in person, but I think for the benefit of our new commissioner, I did want this presentation to go forward, and I do want to afford him the opportunity to ask any questions he might have of you. But we will carry this over to the next meeting.
Yes, sir.
I have a quick question. In regards to the item, it reads for up to 5 years. Are the contracts in place for 5 years, or do we have the discretion of making another year?
Our discretion, up to a maximum of 5.
Just curious.
The one thing I did want to point out to the council members that we're currently on a second extension that expires on June 30th, so it's coming up quickly. Just wanted to point that out.
And I think despite that, because we don't have a quorum present in person, we still are powerless to act.
Is that right?
Yeah, we'll reach out to the current bank and work something out.
Very good.
So we just can't act.
Correct.
All right.
So we'll move on to the next item.
No further questions.
If we'll let the mayor know that he can come back in.
Thank you for your
Michael.
attention.
Thank you.
Next item, we have item number 6, consideration and action on resolution number 2023-076, authorizing Greater Brownsville Incentives Corporation to sell Lot 5 of the North Brownsville Industrial Park.
Good evening.
Hold on until
Yes.
our commissioners come back and we have a quorum.
It gets scary when Roy's in charge. We want to wait till John's back. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
I would just say that I know we talked about continuing to July 11th, but we have a June 27th meeting to canvass the elections. We could take it that day, which would be before June 30th in the last item. And so I'll go ahead and put it on that agenda.
Will
item.
we have another commissioner here?
I know Dr. Gowan will be back in town by the 27th.
Yes,
All right.
she'll be back. I think she's flying in tomorrow.
We'll confirm, of course.
Okay,
Very
thank you.
good.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Tonight, we're going to present, my name is Cesar Rodriguez with the Greater Brownsville Incentives Corporation. Tonight, we will present the project final. This is basically the second to the last
Parcel.
available parcel at the North Brownsville Industrial Park. This is lot 5. It's going to be for an industrial building for manufacturing. They will construct a 50,000 square feet building with an initial investment of 3.5 million and an estimated creation of 50 jobs. On the top image, we can see the image of 2021 when we had only one building on the subdivision. And this is just to give you a little update on what we are working on and what is currently the status on the industrial park. Right now, lot 11 is under construction. I'm gonna say it's about 40 to 50% completed, and we will start seeing a couple of new projects on the industrial park. Tonight, we would like to ask for the authorization to approve the sale of lot number 5 and to authorize the signatories dealing with the related matters. Hopefully, we will see the last parcel to be sold or be taken to the commission within 2 to 3 months, but we're already working with the client.
So I just want to make one comment because I know I hear this just noise out in the community a lot of times when they talk about there should be more focus on industrial and there's too much focus on downtown, and people don't realize, but I've seen it since I've been a commissioner in just these last 2 years, how much GBIC has done in selling these parcels. And I've been out there to attend groundbreakings that you guys have held as well. So to see you guys here at the second to last, fantastic job. Very proud to support you guys, and I'll move to approve.
Thank you.
Second, and I completely agree.
Second, any further discussion?
I have a little discussion on it. Good job on that. Just, can we check some, I think there's a light pole that went
Yes,
down.
the report is already, had been done with the BPUB. They have it on the to-do
I
list.
think it was that, and I think there's like a palm tree, a few palm trees that are dead. I mean, just a couple of
Yes.
things.
So we, just giving you an update on that. So we have been working with a landscaping company. We already have the design for the sidewalks and for the landscape on the park. We're currently just pending an approval from TxDOT just to authorize the construction of the sidewalks. And after that, we'll be moving for construction. But we already have that under the loop.
Thank you.
Commissioner.
That was my comment since we were talking about this place.
Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
Mayor, it is now 7 PM. Next item is executive session. If you would like to make a motion.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, motion.
The following items will be discussed during executive. Item number 1, closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, consultation with attorney, including contemplated or pending litigation, endorsed settlement offer related to cannery project. Item number 2, closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code, Sections 551.071, consultation with attorney, and 551.072, deliberation regarding real property regarding project ecosystem. Item number 3, closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code, Section 551.071, consultation with attorney, including contemplated or pending litigation and/or settlement offer related to economic incentives previously awarded to project capital. Item number 4, closed session pursuant to Texas Government Code, Sections 551.071, consultation with attorney to receive legal advice from legal counsel, and 551.087, economic development deliberation related to Project Domino. Mayor, it is now 8:08. Next item is possible action on any items as discussed in executive session. Item number 1, consideration and action, if any, to the cannery project.
No action.
Item number 2, consideration and action, if any, related to project ecosystem.
No action.
Consideration and action, if any, related to economic incentives previously awarded related to project capital.
No action.
Consideration and action, if any, to approve resolution number 2023-077 related to deliberate economic development negotiations related to Project Domino.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve Resolution 2023-077 related to economic development for Project Domino as discussed in executive session.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries.
Next item is
Adjourn.
adjournment.
All right, we have a motion. Do we have a
Second.
second? We have a second. Any further discussion? Not all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. Ayes have it, motion carries. Meeting adjourned.
It is now 8:20. Meeting has ended.
Nay.